Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode. What? With who? Who we here? And what's the episode for? Okay, we're here with Valerie Taylor, and it's Book Some More 1818 on YouTube and Spotify. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please hit the subscribe button, the like button, and please comment. I want to get your comments. Okay, Valerie Taylor's here today. She's going to give you her little bio. Who are you, Valerie? And what's the name of your book? Oh, I see it. Switch,
Yes.
switched what? What is it
S-
called? Switch to Death?
Switched at Death, Venus Bixby Mystery. What's really clever, I think it's clever anyway, is the title of the book. And my son, who is an older gentleman, stopped by the other day on Mother's Day, and I gave him the book, and he immediately looked at it and he said, "Oh, instead of switched at birth." And I said, "Oh, good, you got the pun." So anyway, so.
Look at that cover, ladies and gentlemen. It is so nice.
Yeah.
Let me see that. Look at that. It's beautiful. Could you tell us a little bit about the book?
Oh, sure, sure. So it is the second book in my cozy mystery series. This is the first one, A Wail of a Murder, which came out a year ago. I'll hold it up again. So you see, so this one takes place in the summer, and so it has a kind of a summer feel with music, museum, and mayhem on the signs there. And then Switched at Death, fast forwards like 5 or 6 months, and you see the signs are cats, cookies, and chaos. So I have a branding thing going on there.
Definitely.
So it takes place Thanksgiving weekend, and it's set in a fictional whaling town situated between Providence and Cape Cod. And so on that Thanksgiving weekend, the town, which I named Chatham Crossing, it's a fictional town, is really excited about the annual Christmas tree lighting. And just as the residents all gather down by the wharfs to light the Christmas tree, the tree goes up in flames, explodes, and the beloved mayor of the town collapses and dies. So now, of course, there has to be an investigation. And Venus Bixby, who is the newest sleuth in town, is asked to be part of the investigation, but she's too busy launching her brand new business. She owns really three other businesses. She owns an oldies music store, a cookie bakery, a dance studio, and then her latest is a kitty daycare center. So she's too busy launching the kitty daycare center. But then her cookie bakery, something happens at the cookie bakery, and it's implicated in the mayor's death. And so is someone who she cares about. So she has no choice but to get involved. And then as she's investigating and she's uncovering clues, she's really fearful that this person that she cares about is involved in the mayor's death rather. So with Venus's newfound sleuthing skills, will she be able to bring joy and a Christmas spirit to Chatham Crossing um, by Christmas? So we shall see.
Shall see. You got to read the book, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, we got to read it.
I have a question for you. The
Okay.
first no the first novels you wrote formed a romantic comedy trilogy. What motivated you to shift to writing cozy mysteries?
Great question. And I can show you the first book in that was What's Not Said. And it is a novel, and it is set in Boston and Venice. And this was supposed to be my, great American novel. And then I had readers say they loved the characters so much that they wanted more. So I was really surprised by that. So I sketched it out and I wrote What's Not True was the second book, and then What's Not Lost was the third book. And so then when I was done with that, I didn't want to do a fourth book. But I had, in talking with readers and comments that I had heard, they said, you really should try writing a cozy mystery because the way that I write is very relatable and it's almost the way that I talk. And so I really, I was motivated and inspired by my readers to write the second book in the rom-com. And then they inspired me to write a cozy mystery. And so I kind of scratched my head and I thought, well, have I read any cozy mysteries? And of course, most of us have. If we've read Agatha Christie, we've read cozy mysteries. And then there's a whole host of others. And so I took an online course on writing and realized that it's a lot more complicated than writing a rom-com because in a cozy mystery you have your crime, right? And so you have your victim and you have your murderer and you have your sleuth and you have your detective. And then you have a whole cast of characters that have to surround them in order to have the puzzle that a cozy mystery is. And then you have a setting, and your setting, is really very important as well. So it was my readers that really, kind of motivated me to go down this route. And so now I've got the two so far, A Whale of a Murder and Switched at Death. So 1 year
Nice
after
to know how readers have such an impact.
they
Good to
do.
know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Your amateur sleuth is a 50-something-year-old owner of an oldies music store, cookie bakery, and kitty daycare. How did Venus Bixby come to be?
Well, that's an interesting question because Venus was actually born in the third book of the rom-com. Venus was a secondary character in What's Not Lost, and she was supposed to have a larger role than she ended up having. But again, listening to a reader while I was writing that book, I was on a Zoom call with a group in Washington State in Seattle. And one of the participants, we were talking about the first two books, and one of the participants said, what I think should happen to Cassie, which is the main character in that book, is thus and so. And it was something that I had been thinking about, but I kind of took her idea and massaged it. And I kind of went back as I was writing the third book and rewrote it, which meant that Venus had to take even a smaller role. So when I was done with that, as I was venturing into the cozy mysteries, I was like, I need a sleuth. And I loved Venus so much. And I loved her name, Venus Bixby, that I kind of coronated her as my sleuth. And her name comes in What's Not Lost. She, as I say, she's a minor character, but she has a sister, Sherry, and they were born and raised down in San Francisco. I see your background there. And their parents were of the generation of the 60s generation, I guess, 1960s. And so their parents were really into music, which all my books are into music. But so when she and her sister Sherry are twins, and so when they were born, they were named after songs. So her sister Sherry was named after Sherry by not Frankie Avalon, The Four Seasons.
For seasons, yes.
And of course, Venus, that was Frankie Avalon. So anyway, so that's how her name came to be. So she became my sleuth in the cozy. So long story. But so what was interesting for me, and it was like a real eureka or aha moment after I had written A Whale of a Murder, and I was thinking about Venus. And when I wrote it, I had to back up 10 years from what the rom-com, because the rom-com is like 2019-ish,
Mm.
but in order to do have Venus in A Whale of a Murder, I had to back it up like 10 years. And so then all of a sudden I realized that my cozies are really a prelude, if you will, to the rom-com.
Mm.
So it just happened that way.
It's interesting, fascinating. Wow. So
Yeah.
much detail. Wonderful. We get to know so much. Thank
Yeah.
you. Switched at Death is set in a historic whaling village called Chatham Crossing. Is it really a fictional town? Yes or no?
It is. Now, when I retired in 2016, I had lived out in, I'm a New Englander, but I went out to Seattle for 10 years for work. And when I came back in 2016, I had started writing what ultimately became What's Not Said a long time ago. But anyway, um, when I came back in 2016, I was like, now what am I going to do with my life? I moved back to Connecticut and, I don't garden, I don't knit, and I do take care of my granddaughter. But I said, I've been carrying around these chapters of a book, I have to do something with it. Anyway, so I was living for a while up, I had a townhouse up near Boston.
Yeah.
And so I had gone back there when I moved back from Seattle, and it was the summer. And so I did some trips, and I went down to a little town called New Bedford, Massachusetts.
Mhm.
And I loved it so much. And I spent hours in the Whaling Museum there.
Ah,
And so when I was thinking about where would my town be, and when you think of TV cozy mysteries, you think of Murder, She Wrote.
yes.
But that's Cabot Cove mostly. I mean, she goes other places, of course.
Mhm.
But I was like, so I don't want to call it New Bedford because I want it to be fictional. So I thought, well, it's between Providence and the Cape, so there's a town on the Cape called Chatham, and so I that's why I called my town Chatham Crossing, and it is fictional, and I found easily you can find anything on the internet, right? So I found a map of New Bedford, and so I actually drew a map, renamed all my streets
Um,
and locations, but it gave me a perspective of what the town could look like. So it's inspired by New Bedford, but it's not a mirror image of New Bedford at all. But it does have, obviously, especially the first book has a lot of whaling in it. Not as much in the second book, but still there.
I like that name, Chatham Crossing.
Yeah,
Chatham Crossing would make a good name for a TV show on your
it
book.
would. Absolutely.
Chatham Crossing. I like that.
Yeah.
Venus has strong relationships with at least three women: her sister, her business partner, and an employee. What role does each woman play in revealing the true essence of Venus to the reader?
Mm. So Venus a, I think she's a very strong-willed character, and she's very competitive. And I mean, that's, right from the beginning. I mean, she was in A Whale of a Murder, the first few chapters are with her husband, and, and she's competitive with him, until he passes away. But I think the women, so there's the three that you mentioned. So her sister, I mentioned her name is Sherry. And then her business partner is Carol Duffy, who is the mayor's wife. Okay, so that adds an element to it because the mayor dies in Switched at Death, right? And then Felicia Walker is the woman she hires to manage the kiddie daycare center. So when you think of it, Sherry brings, kind of the family aspect to Venus's character. And, she relies, her sister still lives in San Francisco, but her sister somehow, for whatever reason, always shows up in the books. And so she relies on Sherry to kind of be her alter ego. And, Sherry kind of pulls her up by the bootstraps when she's saying or doing something inappropriate and kind of, keeps her on the straight and narrow. And so that is good for Venus to have that. And her business partner, Carol, so they were friends. I mean, Carol was one of the first people that Venus met when she and Paul Bixby, who she had married, moved to Chatham Crossing after Venus had graduated from college. But they were friends for years and years. And then, she started her oldies music store was called Oldies and Goodies because at first she sold oldies music and candy. But then Carol, her friend said, the candy's not good in the summer because it melts, so you should do cookies. So Carol became her business partner. So they were friends first, and then they were business partners. And by the time we get to Switched at Death, that relationship becomes strained.
Yeah.
And of course, it becomes strained, in with the death of Carol's husband, Simon, the mayor. And then the last, so maybe the moral of the story is that maybe you shouldn't become business partners with your friends, because, so,
Yep.
um, and, and then she hires this woman, Felicia Walker, as her employee. And what we see in Venus then, because Venus is a widow and she has a love interest. But her love interest is the one that introduced her to Felicia. So along the way, we see Venus show her green-eyed monster, if you will. She becomes jealous
Mm.
of Felicia, and she kind of wonders if there's some, backyard, literally, relationship between her love interest and Felicia. So it shows Venus, kind of the woman in her, comes out. So, put the business person aside and the sister aside, under all of that veneer, she's still a hot-blooded woman. And so I think that the triangle of the three women really encapsulate kind of the three facets of Venus, of who she is.
That's right. That's right. Where can we purchase your book and where can we connect with you? And what's next on your agenda?
So, um, my Whale of a Murder is available on obviously Amazon, but it's also on Kindle Unlimited, so Kindle and Kindle Unlimited. Whereas Switched at Death right now is almost available everywhere. Okay, so certainly online, but also at bookstores, people can ask for it. It's also available, on Nook and Kobo, is it?
Kobo, yes.
Kobo. And, libraries, always ask your library to order the books. So that's really good. And so I am on Instagram and Facebook, and I just started my Substack. So, that's really new and challenging. So my Facebook is Valerie Taylor, author, and Twitter, Valerie E.M. Taylor, and Instagram, Valerie E. Taylor. So you wouldn't believe that there's another famous Valerie Taylor in the world, and she's a shark whisperer and lives in Australia. Like, that's not me. It's not me.
I think I saw that. What? I saw interesting. Very, when I was looking for your books, I said, what?
Yeah, no, that's not
It
me.
can't be her, right? No. But good to know, ladies and
Yeah,
gentlemen.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Valerie, for coming on our show, Book Some More 1818. I read the book, ladies and gentlemen, and I read all her books. They're really good. They're so
Wonderful.
cozy. You want to just take them and hug them,
Oh,
especially
that's so
a day
sweet.
like today when it's raining by me.
Me
Um,
too. Right.
yes. So thank you, Valerie, for coming on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, please like, subscribe to the channel, please. Comment. I want to hear your comments. So does Valerie.
Yeah.
And share. Thank you so much,
Thank
Valerie, for coming.
you. Thank you.
Thank you to all the viewers that are watching the show. I really appreciate you so much. And bye now. Bye, Valerie.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Sylvia.
Bye.
Bye-bye.